ever felt like your worth was tied to someone else's approval or that someone suffering, either you suffering or Jesus, was somehow necessary for your salvation? Let's take a closer look at how these beliefs that we were raised in shape us. So, there's a defining moment from my childhood that, again, I know that my parents meant well and they were trying to teach me lessons and it came from a good place. But also, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So, there was something that happened that set the tone for feeling unworthy and powerless. So, one time, I don't even remember what I did, but my brother and I, maybe we were fighting or whatever. And my mom did the wait until your father gets home, right? So, my father got home. And they used corporal punishment, and we were spanked, usually with a wooden spoon. And the logic behind it was, well, if it's the spoon that's hitting you, it's not me. It's like better than direct hand, right? Plus, they drew a smiley face on it with a marker, so it was fine. So, usually we got spanked with a spoon. And it was never out of anger. I will give my parents that. Like, it was never out of anger. It was never rash. It was never in the heat of the moment or anything. And I'm not like justifying what they did. I'm just saying, like, they truly did like try, right? They sat down with me and explained to me, why and blah, blah, blah. Well, one time, I don't know what the logic was behind this, but one time my dad was like to both me and my brother, he's like, I'm going to show you and personify what Jesus did for you on the cross. He took his shirt off. He gave us a belt, his belt, and he's like, I want you to beat me on the back with this belt as hard as you can. And we were like 5 and 8. I was 8, my brother was 5. And I vividly remember it. Vividly. I mean, it's a core memory, right? And of course, a 5 and 8-year-old aren't going to be able to hit their dad very hard. And he was like, no, harder, And it was like, and it was meant to make me understand Jesus's suffering. But in that moment, what I was actually taught was that suffering is a necessary part of love and faith. And the experience was so confusing and so traumatic. And it left me feeling that my actions, even when forced, had to carry guilt or shame. It didn't really teach me anything about Jesus, right? What it taught me was not just about suffering, but also about powerlessness. A feeling that as a child I couldn't make sense of, but it left a deep emotional imprint. Like I still get a little, I get a little verklempt about it, right? I mean, because I had a really good relationship with my dad, and I still remember I still get upset about it. I'm 47 now. That happened 40 years ago. And I've done a lot of healing, and still it gets me up. I mean, that was powerful. And guaranteed, my dad probably doesn't even remember doing that. I know my mom didn't know about it because I told her about it recently, and she was like, what? This was the start of my believing that goodness came through self-sacrifice, even at the cost of my own peace and dignity. And it really had an impact on my self-worth. This moment and other moments like these of forced powerlessness shaped my view of myself, and it created a deep-seated belief that I am inherently dirty or that salvation had to be earned through suffering. I remember as a very young child being told, you're really not that great. You were born a sinner. You were born awful, and Jesus had to come and save you. At the age of 5 or 6, being told I was awful, but then also, on the other hand, my dad was also, "You're amazing. You're so loving. You're a great daughter. You're a great sister." And very conflicting messaging, right? So this really manifested in my life. It just kind of haunted me for the rest of my life. I always felt like I needed to prove myself, whether to employers or to friends or family or spouses. I was constantly doubting my worth and constantly feeling like I had to earn love or divine favor. In many spiritual and religious settings, these emotions are weaponized to keep individuals small. And this creates a pattern where people feel like they need to atone for their existence. And what does that do? That robs them of their power. The disempowering moments from my childhood, the constant message that my worth was tied to obedience and submission, didn't stay in the past. They followed me, casting a long shadow over my life. For years, I found myself in relationships where I was overgiving, I undervalued myself, and I was constantly trying to prove my worth and sacrificing myself to prove my worth. I made decisions out of fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, fear that I wasn't enough unless I fit into the roles that others had carved out for me. I vividly remember how my first marriage mirrored that same pattern. I was constantly walking on eggshells, afraid that if I asserted myself, I would shatter everything and that would be it. And yet, the trauma of those earlier messages, the ones that told me my voice didn't matter, was the real reason I stayed silent. Trauma isn't just about those single moments of pain, it's the ripple effect, the way those moments embed themselves into our choices and our identity over time. Those early experiences that I had didn't just shape my relationships, they also changed the way I spoke to myself. The voice of judgment and criticism I internalized was louder than any external one. Even when I achieved something, there was always that whisper, "It's not good enough. You could have done better. You're not good enough." I remember standing in my kitchen one day, questioning whether I deserved the life I was trying to build for myself and my kids. A voice inside me echoed with self doubt. "Who do you think you are to want something better? You don't deserve this." That inner critic didn't come from nowhere. It was born from years of being told, directly and indirectly, that my worth was conditional, that I had to earn love, respect, and happiness. And the most painful part was realizing how long I had carried those beliefs as if they were truths. It wasn't until I began to confront those voices through my spiritual practice and the support of my guides that I could begin to rewrite the story I was telling myself. And that's what I want for you too, to recognize that those inner doubts aren't your truth. They are the echoes of the conditioning that you've outgrown. Look, I get it. You've been told you aren't enough or you must earn your worth. You've very likely experienced similar moments in your own life where religious or family dynamics imposed feelings of guilt or inadequacy. Perhaps you were told your worth depended on following specific rules or pleasing others. Maybe you were made to feel ashamed for questioning beliefs that didn't resonate with you. I invite you to view this session as a safe space to bring up memories or beliefs that may have felt too painful to explore before. Reclaiming your power often starts by understanding when and how it was taken away. In your workbook are some prompts to help you with that. These reflection prompts will help you think about your own disempowering moments. Was it a specific religious teaching, a family dynamic, or maybe it was societal pressure that made you feel small? Did you grow up in a setting that equated worthiness with suffering or goodness with self sacrifice? And then I invite you to journal about it. There's a prompt in your workbook. And the journal prompt is, what was the most disempowering belief I was taught about myself? I want to encourage you to sit with this question and really allow memories and feelings to surface. You're okay. It's safe to bring those up. These reflections are part of reclaiming your power. You're bringing those hidden beliefs to light so that they can no longer control you. Your worth doesn't depend on external validation or suffering. Spiritual freedom means seeing yourself as inherently whole and powerful and not needing to earn it through self sacrifice or suffering. I invite you to close this lesson by affirming, I am whole, worthy, and powerful exactly as I am. This is the beginning of taking back the power that you may have unknowingly given away.